Okay, so we have a new film in town. We've been testing it for a while, and you know we love to tell you what we think about films. So let's dive into it. There is a few questions we want to answer. Might this be the best affordable film? Can you get actually good results with it? And how does it compare to other films? I've been shooting this film all summer, and I can't wait to show you what I did. I'm super happy with it. Spoiler alert. If you know us, we are all about the colors. This film performs its best under direct sunlight conditions. It's a film that speaks summer to us. For those who want to get a different mood, perhaps something between the old Fuji stocks and the new Kodak tones, I think this is the right film that you've been looking for. Some say it reminds them to a softened version of the Ektar 100. Perfect for street photography shooting, not so perfect for skin tones. The color palette is somewhat unstable. It depends a lot on temperature of light conditions. For us, sunlight, aka 5500 Kelvin, are the right amount of kelvins that you need to make this film shine. Flash is flash, it works, although you might need some editing love to make those skin tones move away from the magenta color palette. Luckily for you, we learned about that and we are going to show you how to deal with that. To put things a little bit in context, we've seen a huge increase in popularity of film in the last years. This is so amazing. Could never imagine this happening, but also we could never imagine price increase of 30% after 30% after 30%. We are so excited because this film, we feel, fills the gap between budget-friendly option and a really good quality emulsion that you can get very usable results, especially if you give it some love. And this is what we are going to show you today. So moving into the computer, this is just giving you some tips of how to deal with the colors of this film that is a bit out of the ordinary. What you can do either in your computer or we will work also in our phone. First things first, I want to talk about skin tones. We are crazy about skin tones, and it's true that it's not the main strength of this film. But tweaking it a little bit, you can do very funny stuff. Anybody can take these events. It looks nice, but the colors are a bit off for me. It's too yellow. I would just move it somewhere here, and then this magenta starts to pop up. So I really want to get rid of it. This, again, it's a scan on the frontier, which is what this film is actually recommended for. Working with the highlights and then putting the shadows in place. You can adjust again the contrast a little bit and maybe adjust the brightness. And when you have something that you are more or less comfortable with, start touching the color again. In this case, I feel the balance is already locked. So in this case, for me, I would go to the shadows and play a little bit with it, trying to find some of a neutral tone, like moving away from these greenish tones. And maybe if I really want to be like picky about the skin tone, I could just go into the skin tones and move them slightly away from the reddish part. So not too much, but just a bit more natural. You can see how the difference is very, very notable. Fun fact, after I started editing this film this way, I was like, this is kind of bluish and reddish. I don't know if it was meant for this, but I kind of like it. Okay, second shot, we've chosen this because it's actually a summer film. So this is probably what you will be shooting. And I feel this is kind of representative of what any lab could scan. First things first, contrast. We need a bit more contrast to make it more interesting. Now it's popping. Add a little bit of exposure, but this contrast is a bit cheap. I don't know how to explain. So I would use the contrast, but a bit of more manual implemented. What I'm doing is I'm raising the highlights and I'm bringing down the shadows. It's quite good, but I'm still missing a bit of that punch that I'm looking for. So the curve will help me achieve this. I'm bringing the curves up and I'm making the highlights scream a little bit more, but without burning them. So with this in place, now I can just fine tune the contrast, just fine tune the exposure, and I think I'm pretty much done. So it's fairly simple, but it makes an effect. If we make the before and after, you can see there is a significant amount of color change in it, which I think it looks great. Now we will bring this image to the phone. We are not going to be using any fancy editing software or anything. We are just going to use the plain editing software that comes from the iPhone. This has to be a really easy and fun film. The film that you just download your scans, you put it on your phone, and you just tweak a little bit and send it to your friends. We go to edit, and we will not be using the filters, but you could experiment with it if you want. But we will be focusing on the main tools. Sometimes, just for fun, I like to play on automatic setting, which is not too bad, and then I can move into the settings manually. Luminosity sometimes does a bit of funky stuff, but again, this is personal taste. We will deactivate it for this one. Contrast is pretty right, it's what I was looking for. I think brightness will help me achieve this curve feeling that I was doing. The dark point is on point. And I think saturation and vivacity, or intensity in English, it's kind of right. White balance, I could add a bit more yellow here to make the sun pop up. And now that I raise in the yellow, at least in this screen, I see a bit more magenta. So I will try to compensate a little bit with this, like moving it a bit more away from the magenta. Maybe I can just tune down a little bit this yellow, which is bringing me magenta all the time. This is the after, and this is the before. Before and after. Let's move to the next one. 100 in the dark. A bit challenging, but not impossible. Let's dive into what the automatic does. I really don't like it. It's actually enhancing all these greens in the shadows that feel a bit like radioactive, so I'm gonna deactivate it. I could play a little bit with the dramatic mode, that it helps me desaturate by zones, but adds kind of this contrast that I'm not a really fan of. Let's do it manually. Exposure, I think, is pretty good. Luminosity, just for fun, you can play with it. I think this is kind of nice in this one. It's helping recover these highlights, which adds a lot of warmth. I can just emphasize a little bit the highlights. Don't overdo it, because you will make a flat color and it's kind of ugly. So just a little bit. Shadows are pretty okay, pretty decent, but I don't want to touch the shadows too much. In this case, I want to play with the contrast. The contrast will help me move across the image in a more consistent way. Brightness, I think it's pretty much okay. I could give it a bit more moody style like this, but it's pushing it. I would not touch the red point. Color-wise, that's kind of challenging. A bit more magenta, it's needed to compensate for that green. So vivacity in your phone is going to be something like intensity. So this is helping me desaturate only greens, like non-skin tones colors. I can remove vivacity, intensity. I still have this warmth from the window, but all the greens are gone. So this is going to be my secret card to remove that. If I feel like that I lost too much of the yellow on the warmth, I can add a little saturation, or I can just go to temperature and play with it a little bit. If I add some temperature, usually yellow comes with a bit of magenta, so I will need to compensate again with the tint, and I would say I will need to play a bit with the contrast. So again, the most challenging part for me is finding this sweet spot for this warmth that I want to keep without having the greens in the shadow, as you can see. Again, usually when you move something, everything moves along. It's not super easy, but you need to find the sweet spot that works for you. So but I think this is pretty nice. I'm happy with this. The reasons why this film made it into our summer film for 2024, very affordable price, always 36 exposures and sunlight. This film needs sunlight, and it's what we plan to have this summer. For those who were late millennials, early Gen Z, that we remember those Lomo days, there was a lot of expired film, gold for $2.99. Those days are gone. With this I kind of had a bit of the feeling, like this playfulness, this I don't know what's gonna be. Even the light leaks, because everything is spooled by hand, they have a bit of a light leak in the first frame, in the second frame. Some of them are my favorite images, to be honest. For all this compendium of factors, we feel you will have fun with it. It's been incredible to see some of the big YouTube names in the photography scene talking about film. And as Peter McKinnon said, there is something magical about film that digital can just not replicate. We agree 100% with that. Honestly, I believe there is something magical about this roll that will help you get really nice pictures on a budget during your holidays. They were kind enough to provide the code for you guys. We will put it somewhere in the description. It's like Red Hot 100, I believe, which I think is super funny. They are super funny. And if you have any questions about their film, just send us an email. Have a nice summer.